Hi everyone, we're in our final week. So this is week 12 notes. Just a bit of revision to help with your final essay. The notes are in Moodle, so you can just download them and read. And hopefully it helps you craft your arguments for your major essay to finish this semester. Okay, so basically we're looking at revisiting a lot of the concepts you have already been reading to death about technological determinism and social determinism. We discussed that in your first assessment, so try and see if you can apply it to the topics that you've chosen. How does technology define the way news is produced, or even how technology defines how we communicate within families? Or do you find that there is social factors instead guiding how news is produced, and also in turn how news is consumed, therefore providing a lot of factors that changes the way news organizations have had to adopt different sets of mobile media to present videos, present opinions, commentaries, and news to its audiences. The same thing within families. Do you see social factors guiding how certain types of social media is used? How does that change how family members talk to one another, how they keep in touch, how they use certain aspects of the mobile applications or technology to help communicate within families? Um, a bit more technical concepts. Most of you have covered this in your second essay and also in the quiz with the process model, with the ritualistic model, and the SMR model, the sender, messenger, receiver model. You could also explore some of these models when you're analyzing how news is produced and communicated to its audiences, and same thing within families. How do you think it applies to what you are researching? The private and public spheres argument, how has mobile technology changed that? How do we find ourselves having very little privacy or none at all? Do you see that in families? Do you see that in news? Parasocial relationships, a lot of you talk about that when you're analyzing your own mobile use. So do you see, does it even apply to news production? Probably yes. Some people could have parasocial relationships with certain news anchors or news makers. What about within families? Did social media make it easier to have a parasocial relationship? Popular culture, we talked about fandom. A lot of you are into Korean dramas and K-pop. Has that influenced how families speak to one another? What about the call-out culture? Social media made it easier to call out people's ideological beliefs if they differed to your own. Has the cancel culture really overtaken news production? What about digital photography? We looked at how selfies work last week. What are they communicating within the technologies that we use? What codes are they disseminating? How is that changing the narrative and discussions, either as a news consumer or within families? Wi-Fi's even, have they affected any sort of communication? The other newer concepts in the last weeks, this week, I think, not this week, sorry, in week 11, you talked, there is a reading about virtual togetherness. Has social media made us more unified in our thoughts, or have they really polarized us even further? Have they made the left more left in their thoughts? Have they radicalized certain ideologies or certain followings? What about the communication codes that we've seen being disseminated across the different platforms that we use, from social media to certain sort of TikTok videos, or even certain apps that kind of uh, take in your data and measure your data and give you back your news feed with certain algorithms? What are the consequences of these algorithms? I think some of you quoted Tom Scott's lecture, which is great. Do they make us stay in our own echo chambers when it comes to certain news productions, or even within families? Has social media kind of accentuated the use of accentuated certain algorithms? Have they polarized families? The few concepts that are talked about in the week 11 is surveillance capitalism. Big brands using data to survey us. to use our attention as products, to sell our attention to advertisers? And what about the argument of ethics? Is it ethical to be doing that? So these are some positions you can employ when you are arguing for your final essay. So these are just a quick broad view of the concepts we touched on in the last 10-11 weeks. Hopefully you can apply that in your final essay. Okay, so just quick sort of chat about what details you could include in your essay. These are not mandatory, but these I hope help some of you think about how you want to frame your essays. The first topic is the mobile phone has significantly altered the production of news. You could start your analysis discussion by looking at how news have been gathered over the years, what workflows happen in the newsroom, how were they gathered from the field and brought to the desk or brought to like our mobile phones, and how do we see them? How do you think journalists and editors do that on the field? Has speed and efficiency affected the way news is produced? Has the demands on deadlines increased? Do you know that you can always go and chat with Alan on Discord, or even chat with me separately, and how deadlines have changed throughout the years, from a daily deadline, weekly deadline, to something like what the news wires do. They measure minute by minute deadline in order to compete for eyeballs and traffic. You could also chart the history of investment into news technology. Is there infrastructure now to produce news cheaply? Is there infrastructure now to produce news more accurately? What are the tools that are out there that help with news production? Powers that be. Now, media ownership has been a long-standing argument. Who owns certain brands, who owns certain media groups will also chart the way how news is delivered. And does that include censoring certain topics, censoring certain news? Why does that happen? Look at the other side of how news production has been influenced. How do audiences consume news these days? Do they want it fast? Do they want it slow? Do they want long form, short form? Do they want in-depth? Are they looking for facts, or they're looking for something to I can't find the word, looking for something to lend credibility to what they believe in, you know? So how does the COVID conspiracy theory even kind of emerge? How does the Brexit arguments emerge? So think about how audiences also consume news, and that in turn affects how news producers deliver content. So yeah, what effects do audiences have on news production as well? So this gives you a different perspective on analyzing news production. Polarization, we know that is even more deeper these days with so much information, so much niche and fragmentation happening in the news sphere. What has that done to our consumption of news? And in return, how has that affect the way journalists had to go and look for information, interview, who they're interviewing, what questions are they asking, how are they having to think about different ways to deliver news to polarized audiences? So think about all the issues that's been happening. You can even anchor on a couple in things like Brexit, the US politics, even trans issues. How have they divided audiences, and how does news production respond to that? Agenda setting, it just comes back to who owns the news, which powers that play, how do they set agendas? There's for instance, in the Brexit argument, there's newspapers like the Daily Mail, you know, who owns the Daily Mail? How do they set the agenda? What do they want to frame in the mind of voters when they went to the ballot box to vote whether Britain stays in EU or not? How do you think agenda setting also plays up in news production? Okay, so we look for original insights, meaning arguments that you have come up with based on what you've read, and a position that you probably take. You may take a certain position in your essay, or you may kind of look at the pros and cons in arguing this topic. Okay, so topic 2. Social media has completely changed the communicative dynamics in families. Discuss pros, discuss cons, discuss a position that maybe you feel strongly about. So an essay is about your persuasion and your conviction towards delivering a message to the reader. So think about that as well when you are crafting your structure for your essay. Now, how does communication happen in families? In the pre-internet days, before social media existed, how do you think this happened? What are the dynamics in family communication? How does parents speak to each other? Parents speak to siblings, extended families, grandparents. How does that work? What technology has disrupted these dynamics? Has it made it easier? Has it made it more difficult? Has it made it cheaper? Or is there too much communication, or is there too little? Now, analyzing social media use, very simply look at how social media is being used. What type of social media is being used in families, for instance? Maybe you can hone on a couple of examples and analyze those. Has it changed the style, the speed, or the behavior of certain people? At the dinner table, are everybody on their phones? Do they even eat together anymore? Is there a need to put down, is there a no phone rule during dinner or meal times? How does that change the dynamic within families? Are there physical changes? Are there physical changes that I think falls towards technological deterministic arguments, right? Do people's posture change? Are there more aches and back pains? Or cultural changes? Does the language become ruder, or the language become more direct? Or are people more polite when typing and using social media to communicate? Has it deepened relationships or disrupted power relations? Is it easier to speak to some elder person in a family, or has it made it difficult? What sort of aspects can you discuss within the family? Popular culture is a great one to start exploring. Do certain families follow certain popular culture? How do they engage in consuming, certain types of music, maybe a type of drama, a genre, a certain YouTube channel? How does social media change all that? What about languages? Are we having the ability to watch things that are not in our native language? Has it made us closer? Has it made us more aware of other cultures? What about the pandemic? Many of us are separated, many of us are separated from our loved ones or our relatives. How has that changed with the advent of social media? Again, politics, very big thing. How Brexit has divided many families, even the Malaysian political scene, or even a political scene at home where you're at, Bangladesh, in India, in Saudi, in China. How has that even affected how people discuss politics at home? Do you discuss politics at home? Has it been made easier with the use of social media? So, keeping this quite short and succinct so we don't drag this on too much. Have clear arguments, persuasive arguments. So before you start writing out your essay, find 3, 5 to even 8 strong points. 5 points, 8 points, up to you, but make sure you are clear on how you want to argue your point, and then have the integration with your theories clearly written as well. You could make a claim, and then you could just add a theory and a definition there and expect the reader to make the assumption or link. I don't want that. So integrate it meaning you show that, say, social media affects families and brought them closer during COVID pandemic because communicative technologies has made it easier due to etc. And then you quote a theory. This is shown in this theory, etc. So connectors, phrases will help to link your ideas to theories, and that comes with a fairly good expression of the language. I can't emphasize enough, because even though you write simplistically, you write using, you don't have to write sophisticatedly, but you write simplistically, as long as your point is made clear, like what your message is to your audience, your argument, the point that you want to make is clear to the reader, you will be rewarded for that. The other thing I wanted to raise is when you make such claims about, say, social media has disrupted family connections, and then that is one point, right? How? Then I will ask how. How does that happen? Why are you saying that? Give us an example to substantiate that claim. Or it has disrupted because it has made meal times more difficult. Nobody has eye contact anymore, and that affects the way, the physical behavior or the physical changes I see within my a member of the family. And this is also backed by McLuhan's approach to how technology determines, a particular person's behavior. Then you kind of have a flow of argument to your point. If you're unsure, look at the FAQs in the assessment too. Dr. Krish has provided quite very detailed ways of how to integrate your ideas to a particular theory or an author's claim. Provide a position or an analysis of the pros and cons. So a lot of people have asked if do we need to take one position or do we need to analyze both. I say go through your readings and come up with an original insight. So an original insight means your own insight that you have concluded. You think that maybe news production hasn't been affected by mobile technology at all, please prove it. Or you think it has, prove it. Or you think that social media has really made family connections weaker, prove it. So that's what the essay is about. That is what we want to see in your writing, to show critical thinking, to show that you're able to sift through the material of the semester and to be able to come up with your own position, not just regurgitating definition after definition, phrase after phrase. And always look for credible data and theories. This hasn't been a problem with the essays that I've looked at, but I do want to see paraphrasing. I want to see your own words when you're comprehending a theory. If you say Bioka insists that audiences are active when they're rational, they're able to have free will, then they think on their own 2 feet, for instance. You can paraphrase that. And now we know that it is backed by Bioka's arguments. So try and use your own words where possible, or paraphrase, so that we are able to see the effort made on your part in comprehending the concepts that have been given to you over the semester. Okay, so that's it for this quick sharing of some notes. So feel free to drop us a note on Discord or talk to us separately in consultation if you're looking to further deepen your analysis for your final essay.